While she's unmuting. Okay, thank you. So everybody who's typing in, you pre-ordered books, all the pre-ordered books have been shipped out if they have been published. Some of the books aren't publishing until September. So if you haven't got your book, it should be arriving very shortly. So welcome everybody. My name is Susan Macbeth. I'm the founder and owner of Adventures by the Book. And I'd like to welcome you to our Fall Pitch Fest, which we do twice a year to help you choose your next reading adventure, because we know there are tons of books and authors out on the market, and we're partial to a few of our Adventures by the Book authors, and we know that they are ready, willing, available, and excited to meet with all of our readers, whether you're with a book club, a library group, a reading group, an individual reader. These are authors who want you to read their books. They want to meet with you. They want to schedule book club visits, library visits with you. And all you have to do is go to our website, adventuresbythebook.com. You can register your book club or library group for free and view all these beautiful authors and their books, and even view their calendar of availability and schedule visits right there on the site. One-stop shopping. It couldn't get better than that. Today's event is featuring 18 authors who will be joining us in alphabetical order. And most of you, all of you, should have your handy dandy cheat sheet that we emailed out to everyone. And it lists all the authors and their books, left a section for you to write some notes so you can make notes about which books you want to buy, which books you want to read, which books you want to schedule book club visits for or invite to your library. So we'll be going through those one at a time. Some of the authors will be joining us as they draw closer to their event time, and some will join us for the whole thing. So if you want to put your screen on gallery view to see everybody or speaker view, totally up to you. For those of you who are new to Adventures by the Book, you know we do multi-sensorial events. We do Pitch Fest, we do bingo, we do lots of virtual events, but we also do in-person events. And we'll be mentioning a few of those as we go through the event today. But a couple that I wanted to mention, our next in-person event in San Diego is with actress Annabelle Gurwitch, who will be in San Diego. She's going to be at a conference speaking at the convention center, and she asked us to put a book signing event together for her while she's here in town. So we're excited to meet with her. We've posted her many times, and she is hysterical. She's beautiful. She's talented. You may have seen her on Seinfeld or Dexter, and she's got a book coming out that she'll be talking about. Our next Reading Between the Vines event in Sonoma happens to be our very own Anna Bliss, right? Is that Sunday? All right. So if you're anywhere in the Sonoma area, you can attend the event at Hook and Ladder Winery. It's free, and the winery sells wine and book paired packages, including Anna's book. So it's going to be really fun to do that. What else do we have coming up? Oh, we have our Adventures by the Book Club. This is something we've started a couple months ago, courtesy of our 7 Adventures by the Book ambassadors who rotate hosting book club events. This one is going to be with Janet Skesley and Charles and Kate Thompson. It'll be a really good event on September 4th. And that'll be hosted with 3 of our ambassadors. And let's see, what else do we have on the agenda? Oh, I probably shouldn't announce this until it's firmed up, but you know what? I'm going to, because why the heck not, is next year, we are hoping to finalize 2 Adventures by the Book trips. We've held off since COVID, but we're going to try it up again next year. And we're hoping in June to go to Ashland, Oregon to do the Shakespeare Festival. And then we're hoping to go to France in September with a US-based author who wrote a book about Marc Chagall. And he's going to take us all around and do a Marc Chagall and food and culture thing in France. So mark your calendars for France, and I hope some of you can join us. Thank you to everyone who pre-ordered books. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, most of the book orders have been mailed out. So if you haven't gotten your copy yet, it should be there shortly. Unless the book does not release for a couple weeks yet, there are some books that don't get released till September. So don't email us and ask us where that book is, because it'll be mailed out when it's published. And I think that's about it. I want to introduce our staff, Sarah, and can you wave, Sarah? And Fabiola Fabiola, if you want to wave. I have to leave at 4:30 Pacific time. And once I do, Sarah's going to take over hosting the rest of the event. So just wanted to give you a heads up. I have charged Sarah with limiting these presentations to 4 minutes each. It's really, 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 really hard to cut somebody off when they're talking. We hate doing that. So please, I'm begging of you authors to watch your time, stop at 4 minutes so that we don't have to interrupt you, because we love hearing everything you have to say. We are going to start alphabetically with Donna Jones Allward. And do I understand that today is your birthday, Donna?
Yeah.
Happy birthday. Oh, she's joining us from
Thank you.
Canada. It's her
Thank you.
birthday. And did I also hear that for your birthday, you got your wish of becoming a Toronto Star best-selling author? Is that true?
It is.
That is fabulous. Congratulations and happy
Aw.
birthday.
Thank you.
Yes. So Donna Jones Allward has enchanted readers with stories of happy endings and homecomings that have been awarded multiple awards, including the one I just mentioned, and been translated into over a dozen languages. Her novel, When the World Fell Silent, is about the 1917 Halifax explosion in Nova Scotia. She is joining us here from Canada. Two women will never be the same again as their paths cross in the most unexpected way, traveling both heartbreak and joy in its wake. But I hope with your trademark happy endings. Welcome, Donna. We can't wait to hear more.
Thank you. This is When the World Fell Silent. A lot of people don't realize that the Halifax explosion even happened in 1917. And Halifax was in Nova Scotia, was a very important port in the war. And two ships collided in the harbor on December 6th. One was carrying munitions and it caught on fire. When it exploded, it leveled a whole section of the city and it killed almost 2,000 people. It wounded about 9,000 more, about 25,000 were displaced without suitable housing. So I chose this as the backdrop for this book, which I live just outside of Halifax. It seemed appropriate. It follows the stories of two very different women. One is a little more career focused, which is a bit of an anomaly in 1917. She's a military nurse working at the new Camp Hill Hospital. And the other woman is Charlotte. She's a war widow and she has a small child. She lives with her in-laws. It's not really a happy situation. And both of these women lose people during the explosion, as so many families did at the time. And as they go through the healing process and the grieving process, you know, they make choices about their families, about what their lives are going to look like, sometimes just choices about how to get through the next day. But the choices that they make put them on a collision course with each other. And I don't want to spoil too much because it's a pretty big twist as to how they come together. But ultimately, you know, there's a big choice that has to be made, a big decision. And, you know, not everyone's going to come out of this with everything that they want. And so it's really about questions like, what is family? And, you know, who is your family? What does that look like? What does it mean to you? You know, it's about resilience and strength and, you know, making the right choice, even when it's the hard choice. So that's, it touches on a lot of those themes and a lot on motherhood. And there's a little bit of love in it. And I won't say it doesn't necessarily have a Donna Allward trademark happy ending, but I think it definitely has a hopeful ending. And I think I'll always be a writer who wants to see people find the lives that they really desire and get what they deserve. And that can be true whether it's the main characters and the heroes and heroines or the villains. So that's When the World Fell Silent. And I would love to come to any book club, any library. Just send me an email. I will respond to anything. I am always so happy to interact with readers.
Thank you so much, Donna. And I saw in the chat box from Janice that, all right, it just unscrolled. Okay, she says Boston receives a Christmas tree every year from Nova Scotia as a thank
Yes.
you for sending aid after the explosion.
Boston was the first city to mobilize really outside of Canada to send relief, and they sent a whole unit from Harvard Medical School to set up a medical station downtown. And so, as a way of saying thank you, Nova Scotia does send Boston a Christmas tree every year that gets lit up on the common.
That's lovely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Janice, too. Next up is Jeannie McMillions Blasberg. She is an award-winning and best-selling author and essayist. Her book, The Nine, excuse me, was honored with the 2019 Forward Indies Gold Award in Thriller and Suspense, and the Gold Medal and Juror's Choice in the 2019 National Indie Excellence Award, among others. Her newest novel, Daughter of a Promise, is a modern retelling of the legend of David and Bathsheba. And the last time I saw Jeannie was in Boston. We did an Adventures by the Book fall foliage tour to New England, and she graciously set up a fun excursion for our group with some other authors as well. So it's great to see you again, Jeannie, and take it away.
Oh, Susan, it's so great to be here. Thank you so much for everyone who's joining us this evening. I'm really excited to present Daughter of a Promise to you all. The cheat sheet you received described this novel as a modern retelling, just like Susan said, of the legend of David and Bathsheba. And in fact, Kirkus called it a wonderfully wise book, giving it a starred review that went on to say, Daughter of a Promise is a sagacious and graceful modern day retelling of a biblical love story. But this can also be read and enjoyed without a footing in the Bible, because it really uses the ancient story to amplify the fact that our human experience, including our relationships and our love relationships, have been a struggle for thousands of years. The world may look a lot different than the time when a powerful King David fell for a beautiful woman he saw from afar. But things like desire, chemistry, consent, respect, disappointment, and commitment have not changed. And so, in all my novels, I like to refer to symbols and metaphor from one of Western civilization's oldest pieces of literature, the Bible, to make that point. All that aside, Daughter of a Promise is a coming of age story, told in the first person by protagonist Betsabe Ruiz. She tells of a 12-month period in her life spanning June 2019 to June 2020, from her college graduation, moving to New York City, and beginning a job as an investment banking analyst on Wall Street. As a theater and psych major, she's an unlikely candidate, needing to put in long hours during the summer's boot camp, but she ends up at the top of her class, garnering placement in the highly coveted mergers and acquisitions department, working alongside the firm's rainmaker, David. And this 12-month period includes making a best friendship in her roommate, mentorships and close relationships at work, and ultimately an attraction to her boss. As you may suspect, a timeline stretching into June 2020 means her year also included a pandemic, social unrest, loss of life, and personal tragedy. Betts originally assumed that this life in New York was going to teach her everything about becoming a successful adult, but over the course of this tumultuous year of ups and downs, she's broken open to her innate wisdom, and it's a wisdom that reminds her that the sophistication and glamour of New York was purely superficial, and she had already known everything of importance in the lessons that had been passed down from her mother and grandmother in Miami. Daughter of a Promise is a coming of age, a retelling, and a love story, ultimately a love story in which my strong female protagonist learns what it means to truly love herself. Readers of my prior novels, Eden and The Nine, will also enjoy revisiting some well-loved characters, as well as the Rhode Island summer enclave setting that make an appearance in Eden. I didn't set out to write a trilogy, but these 3 books share sensibility, setting, some characters, as well as my thematic obsession around familial relationships, mother-daughter, grandmother-granddaughter, as well as daughter-father, and sometimes more aptly, the absence of a father. Since Eden was published in 2017, I've really enjoyed visiting book clubs, both online and in person, and would really love the opportunity to share some of the personal backstories behind my work. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Jean. And I did forget to mention that about a dozen of our authors generously offered to donate books for giveaways. We're going to give those away at the end of the event. You do have to be present to win because we don't want to shortchange any of our authors who are at the end of the alphabet. So make sure you stay to the end because we're going to be giving away books, which is always fun. Thank you, Jean. And next up is Anna Bliss. Anna is a debut novelist with an MA in Literature and Visual Culture from the University of Sussex, where she wrote her dissertation on women's narratives of the London Blitz during World War II. Her debut novel, Bonfire Night, is a wrought novel set during World War II, which brings together a young Irish Catholic photographer and a British Jewish medical student, each discovering the price of love, art, and ambition. And as I mentioned earlier, she is going to be at Hook and Ladder Winery in Sonoma in person on Sunday. So if you're in the area, come visit her there. But we're looking forward to hearing more about your book, Bonfire Night. Welcome, Anna.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Yes, as you said, my book is Bonfire Night. Here it is. I still get excited looking at it. And it's a great book for people who enjoyed The Paris Library or Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. If you like those books, I think you will like my book. So Bonfire Night is a character-driven, richly emotional novel set during World War II, and it combines a classic star-crossed love story and an inspiring story of female independence and empowerment. It opens in London in 1936. At 21, Kate Grifferty is a press photographer in a Fleet Street agency, an unusual job for a young woman. But Kate is both talented and daring, recklessly going wherever the story might be, including one October day to an anti-fascism protest in East London. There she meets David Rabatkin, a brilliant Jewish medical student. While his idealistic brother is eager to go to Spain and join the fight for the Republic, David knows where his path lies. At home, fulfilling the expectations of his profession and his family. Meanwhile, Kate is exposed for the first time to the dangers and demands of David's world, where marrying within the Jewish faith is seen as not only preferable, but key to survival. Kate neither expects nor wants to be any man's wife hampered by convention. And though she and David are both outsiders, as war looms, other differences between them are thrown into sharp relief. And part 2 opens in Brighton, which is in southern England. It's a beach town in 1940. Catastrophe has forced Kate to flee London, and the onslaught of war finds her working at her sister's seaside boarding house, while David tends patients at a busy London hospital as the Blitz rages. But Kate's challenges and disappointments have only deepened her desire to capture images of life unfurling around her, the beauty and the violence, struggles, and surprising joys. And soon fate and ambition will align, providing her with her chance to make her mark at last. The Historical Novels Review calls Bonfire Night a tightly structured and beautifully written novel. Anna Bliss depicts the characters' passion with their conflicts with the perceptive eye in this moving, complicated story. Bonfire Night's distinctive angle on World War II impacts the unique Romeo and Juliet scenario, compelling and surprising readers from the beginning to the epilogue set in 1945. Highly recommended. The Toronto Star calls it a tender debut about the price of female ambition, at times wrenching, but also emotionally rewarding. And Publishers Weekly called it a wrenching debut. The story comes alive in Bliss's meticulous account of the threats of fascism and anti-Semitism, as well as in her exploration of the messiness of love and family. This is a well-crafted contribution to World War II fiction. It took me 6 years to write Bonfire Night. It's research heavy, but it's also a sweeping love story. And I love going to book clubs and talking with readers about it. It's so much fun. And I would love to, if possible, come in person or on Zoom. And I hope you really enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, and congratulations on all the great reviews. It's very exciting.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Flora Chilton, a member of the Patawomeck Indian tribe of Virginia. Laura Chilton tells the story of her people and their unlikely survival due to the courage of 3 Patawomeck women. As part of the process, she interviewed tribal elders, researched colonial documents, and studied the Patawomeck language. Her novel, 1666, is a fictional retelling of the survival of the Patawomeck tribe of Virginia through the lives of 3 women. And it's gotten rave reviews. We cannot wait to hear more about it. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you. Wingapo, Natada Duwins, Kesato Nita. Hello, my name is Silverheart. These words of greeting I bring you in the language of the Potomac tribe of Virginia. I'm so excited to be here and share with you my new historical fiction, 1666, a novel, and many thanks to Adventures by the Book for organizing such a fun night. I know the clock is ticking, so let's go. 1666, a novel, is a survival story of the Potomac tribe in Virginia based on written colonial records and oral tradition of the tribe. In 1666, the English Governor's Council decided to make war to the utter destruction of the tribe and dispose of the women and goods. This utter destruction happened in the middle of the night in July 1666. We know this is a fact because they wrote it down. The native people in Virginia were under pressure from the colonizers to sell and vacate their land and accept chiefs appointed by the Governor's Council. The Potomac had lived along the Potomac Creek for over 300 years and did not agree to give up their land. On that night, when all the men were killed, the village was burned, the women and children taken captive. The oral tradition of the tribe picks up the story at this point. The women and children were marched south, sold into slavery, and shipped to Barbados to work in the killing sugar fields. Miraculously, 2 or 3 women returned from Barbados to Virginia. Their bravery and strength is part of why the tribe exists to this very day. To be sure, it is a hard story that touches on difficult subjects, but it is ultimately a story of great love, resilience, and survival. It is an inspirational story that shows how strength and determination can grow from love. It is a women's story told in the voices of 2 main characters. I use native names to honor some of what was lost, the culture and the language. Asaway is Golden Fawn, and Napawesho is Shining Moon, best friends who tell their stories. When they get to Barbados, their paths diverge when they are sold to different plantations. Barbados in the 1660s was a decadent, sugar-rich place, referred to as Little England. A hodgepodge of people lived there, English explorers hoping to make it rich, Jews and Quakers escaping persecution, slaves from Africa and the Americas doing the hard labor in the sugar fields. In 1666, a novel, the reader sees the world through the eyes of Asaway and Sho. They remember their peaceful life before the massacre and long for home. Both have daughters they vow to protect from the new evils they are experiencing. This is a forgotten story to most of the world. Much like we weren't taught about the burning of Black Wall Street in Tulsa in the 1920s, much like what we didn't know about the Osage tribe, but we learned from Killers of the Flower Moon. 1666, a novel, is more than just a story. The cultural practices around death, childbirth, and rites of passage are described as they are lived. The women ponder the Patawomeck spiritual practices as they learn about the Anglican faith, Judaism, the traditions of Quaker Friends, and the religions of their fellow African slaves. I'm a member of the Potomac tribe through the lineage of my father. To research, I took language and culture classes on Zoom during the pandemic. I read every book I could find and talked with tribal elders. I was able to research in Barbados when a COVID window opened. If you like historical fiction, Strong women's stories, Indigenous stories, forgotten stories with sweeping vistas that tug at your heart. 1666, a novel, is for you. Available at your local indie bookstore, on Amazon. And for the month of August, the ebook is available for $1.99. So if that appeals to you, please get it again. And I would love to visit with your book clubs as well. Thank you so much. Clock's ticking. I think I'm done.
Thank you, Laura. And Simon mentioned in his chat, and Simon is one of our Adventures by the Book ambassadors who's an avid reader and writes incredible reviews. 1666 is an amazing immersive tale of bravery, strength, and resilience. Oh, just flashed off my screen. And you can definitely tell the author did her research with the incorporation of authentic language. Thank you for bringing your lineage to the pages. Can't wait to see what's next. Thank you, Simon, for that. Also, I wanted to give a shout out. We have 5 authors from Sibylline Press here today. They are a new publisher just celebrating their 2nd birthday, founded by the amazing, talented Vicki DeArmond, who I've known for many years. And she wants to celebrate female authors who have celebrated their 50th year with fabulous stories to tell. So thanks, Vicki, for bringing Sibylline Press and bringing all your authors to us. Last but not least on my introduction list before I take off is Janice Robinson Daly. Intrigued by the discovery that an ancestor was a founder of the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania, Janice Robinson Daly, who you may already know as one of our Adventures by the Book ambassadors, found her next career direction, unearthing the stories of women whose lives have remained in the shadows. Her latest novel, The Path Beneath Her Feet, is the emotionally charged sequel to her last book, The Unlocked Path, which follows Dr. Eliza Edwards' commitment to limit suffering and save lives amid the tumultuous landscapes of 1930s and 40s America. And you will see that Janice is going to be hosting our September 4th Adventures by the Book Book Club. And you can go to our website and find out more information about that. But we're looking forward to hear more about The Path Beneath Her Feet. Welcome, Janice. And before I go, I am going to leave, and the next introduction will be done by Sarah. She'll close out the program. So Sarah, be ready. And this is Sarah's first time hosting. So be kind to her, help her along, and be supportive of her. She's going to do an amazing job. And thanks to Fabiola behind the scenes, who's been typing in all those links for you to share of our authors and learn more. So thank you everyone for coming. Take it away, Janice, and I'll see you guys all next time.
Great. Thank you so much, Susan. Safe travels. Wonderful to be here tonight with you all. Boy, we've only heard from 4 authors, and already my pile has risen by 4 books for sure. So very excited. So I am a visual person. I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully this will work. I always say pictures are worth 1,000 words. And if you have a Boston accent saying those words, even better for you, right? So I write historical fiction. My debut novel, The Unlocked Path, came out just about 2 years ago, celebrating next week. And you might even see on there a quote from one of our authors tonight. Tracy Anderson Wood was an early reader for me on The Unlocked Path, saying Eliza never falters from her mission to limit suffering and save lives. Thank you again, Tracy, for reading. And The Path Beneath Her Feet is a continuation of my fictionalized character, Eliza Edwards, a young woman who attends the Women's Medical College in Pennsylvania in 1897. She goes on through her residency, early career, ending in 1920 is where we leave off with Eliza. The Path Beneath Her Feet comes out September 5th. Very, very excited to have a second book coming. And we are picking up Eliza in 1936, in the midst of the Depression in Boston, where she is now facing being a slightly more mature woman. And during the Depression, if there were any jobs out there, they were going to the men, which meant she needed to find a new path for herself at the age of 57. No easy task for any of us, let alone a medical doctor, when less than 5% of our doctors were women. I did a ton of research for both of my books, and it was during some research with The Unlocked Path that I discovered the existence of the American Women's Hospital Units. They formed in 1917, went to France during World War I, and then they came back. I'm going to get a slideshow, hopefully. They came back to America in the early 1930s as the Depression is raging, and realized there was tremendous need in our own country for healthcare, particularly right in the rural South. And that's where they went, down to Appalachia, even as far south as rural communities in Florida, to address what is happening, to address what was happening with those terribly impoverished families living in Appalachia and not having the health care they wanted. And of course, this is not cooperating for me, so let's just forget it. So American Women's Hospital self-funded themselves. They were all women doctors, nurses, staff. They went to Appalachia. They brought nutrition and educational programs to those communities, vaccines and supplies, and even set up maternity shelters and baby care classes, looking to help, again, those women. I really was excited to also extend Eliza's path. She does go to Tennessee and opens a maternity shelter, but I wanted to give her a couple of other paths to get there. And one other spot she visits is Warm Springs, Georgia. Height of the polio epidemic in the 1930s, FDR's Rehabilitation Center in Warm Springs. Eliza also travels there, always looking to find a way to care for others and continue her calling. By 1940, she gets another calling, and that's to return home to Boston to return and take care of an elderly parent. And I'm sure many of you, like myself, may have faced that life situation as well. She comes back to Boston, and now World War II has broken out. As the mother of two sons of service age, now she is also faced with the prospect of one son in the Army Air Corps and another son in the US Navy, battling on both fronts, and she's not hearing from them for months on end. It wasn't, like today, where you know where your kids are every minute. You have no idea. So there's a lot of challenges for her. We have a mature protagonist, which I think is important in today's literature, and to always think of these women that really needed to be celebrated and honored, those early women doctors who were pioneers. So Eliza, although she is a fictionalized character, she's a composite of all the research I did, traveling to Drexel University, who has all the archival materials of the American Women's Hospital. And I would also be remiss if I didn't also thank Jill Paul, who read an early copy. And apparently, I think she likes Eliza. She said Eliza Edwards is a true original, and this novel is full of heart. So I hope you will consider checking that out. September 5th, it's on pre-order now. You can always ask any local library or bookstore to order it for you. And I love visiting book clubs. And I have many paths beneath my feet, and I will travel. So not just Zoom. I am on the road all the time, going up and down the East Coast. I even detoured coming home from Florida last year to go to Ohio. So anything is possible. I would love to connect with you all at some point.
Thank you so much, Janice. I hope everybody can hear me. Again, like Susan said, it's my first time. So I hope you guys give me some patience. But thank you so much, Janice. She's been amazing as one of our ABT ambassadors, and I hope you guys will also join us for our ABT book club with Karen E. Osborne, which she is co-hosting. Up next, we have Becky Ellis, who is a Timberwolf pup, the daughter of a highly decorated World War II combat sergeant. She is a veteran of a war fought at home. Her book, Little Avalanches, is a gorgeously written memoir of breathtaking scope that propels readers from the beaches of California in the early 70s to the battlefields of World War II. Welcome, Becky.
Thank you, Sarah, for that beautiful introduction. I appreciate it. So Little Avalanches is a memoir, which means it's a true story, and it's about me. I was raised in California in the 1970s, and while other kids were learning to roller skate and listening to disco, I was learning to shoot a gun, hiding from phantom Nazis, and getting my teeth drilled without Novocaine, stuff like that. My father wanted his kids to be tough as old nails and prepared, but prepared for what, we did not know. We knew he'd been in World War II because when he was drunk, he would spool out fragments of scary stories, but we did not know that he was a rifleman who crossed enemy lines first, and we had no idea that his unit suffered a 300% casualty rate. What I knew as a little girl, and like all little girls and women know, is that I loved my dad and I wanted him to love me. But my dad was a hard man to love. Most often, he was really tough. So I grew distant, keeping the tender parts of myself hidden from him and everybody else. Then he visited me in Portland, Oregon, where I lived with my husband and 3 daughters. He was 89 at the time. Yes, 89. I was in my late 40s then. And one Tuesday afternoon, I stood in the kitchen making him a tuna sandwich. And he sat at the kitchen table across the room and asked if we had any issues to clear up. And oh boy, did we have issues. Not only was he tough on me and my siblings, but he married 4 times and fathered 8 children and never explained anything to anyone. My father did not talk about the past, not about 70 years ago, not about 5 years ago, not even 5 minutes ago. And this was my father making the rounds, clearing up old business because he was aging. And I really think he thought I'd say, "I'm great, Dad. Look around. What could be wrong?" I had tried so hard to escape my childhood, and I had created this really carefully curated life with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances and nice vacations and great cars and wonderful kids, the whole thing. But inside all of it, I felt like I was holding it together with Scotch tape. And I realized I hadn't escaped my childhood. I was hiding from it. And I thought, this is my chance. I looked across the kitchen at my father, his thin skin and the tremor in his hand. And I said, "Dad, I want to know about the war." Of course, he resisted, but back and forth we went for a few hours, and he finally broke 70 years of silence and started talking and sharing. For the next few years, we talked and I researched, and I finally understood the demons I'd inherited. And in the end, I realized that my story was inconceivable without his, and his story was incomplete without mine. So Little Avalanches offers both my childhood, his experience of war without glory, and our year-long conversation. What it really does is it reminds us that we are profoundly shaped by the secrets we keep and forever changed by the stories we share. And this is the kind of book that readers want to, or maybe even need to talk about when they've finished reading. And book groups are having conversations about risk-taking, about parenting and motherhood. There are 4 different mothers in the story, about the silencing of children, about women finding their voice, and about how the heck to get our parents to talk about something other than the broken furnace. It has really been my intention all along to encourage deeper conversation and connective conversations like the one my father and I had, which cracked us both open to have a more authentic and joyful relationship. And this is Little Avalanches right here. And one more thing I would love to mention is that Little Avalanches just won the International Rubery Book Award for Best Nonfiction Book of the Year. I was just thrilled. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Becky, and congratulations. Also, for those who didn't know, we offer In the Spotlight features of some of our authors and their books on our website, and Becky Ellis's Little Avalanches is our spotlight book for the month. So keep an eye out on those in our homepage. Thank you, Becky. Our next author is Loretta Ellsworth, who's earned a master's degree in writing for children from Hamline University. She's the author of 4 young adult novels, The Shrouding Woman, In Search of Mockingbird, In a Heartbeat, and Unforgettable, as well as her debut adult novel, Stars Over a Clear Lake. Her new novel, The French Winemaker's Daughter, set during World War II, is an unforgettable historical novel about love, war, family, and loyalty, told in the voices of 2 women generations apart who find themselves connected by a mysterious and valuable bottle of wine stolen by the Nazis. Welcome, Loretta. Yeah, I think you're still muted.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. I'm joining you from Lakeville, Minnesota. And my latest book is called The French Winemaker's Daughter. It's a story of two women who are connected by a very rare bottle of wine. It's also set in two different time periods. It's a book that's been described as a book about beautiful vineyards, good wine, romance, and a bit of mystery mixed in. In 1942, 7-year-old Martine hides in an armoire when the Nazis come to take her father away. Pinned to her dress is a note with an address in Paris, and in her arms, a bottle of wine she's been instructed to look after if something were to happen to her papa. But the terrified young girl drops the bottle and runs to a neighbor when she hears Germans in their vineyard. Martine is eventually rescued by Sister Ada, who takes her to an abbey outside of Paris. Sister Ada has her own mysterious past, one that Martine discovers during her time there. And in 1990, Charlotte, who is a commercial airline pilot, attends an auction with her French boyfriend at Hotel Drouot, the oldest auction house in Paris. After bidding on a box of wine, her boyfriend gives Charlotte a seemingly inferior bottle of wine that he finds inside the box. While cleaning the bottle, the label comes off, revealing a note underneath, and underneath that, a different label. This sends Charlotte on a quest to find the origins of the unusual and very valuable bottle of wine, a quest that will take her back 50 years into the past. It's a book, too, that makes you think about the stories that lurk behind objects that we take for granted as mere tokens of our travels. I go to a lot of antique houses in places, and you know, everything you pick up has a story, doesn't it? You know, so this book, French Winemaker's Daughter, comes out December 10th from HarperCollins, but you can pre-order it now, and it would make an excellent Christmas gift for yourself or for a friend or relative. I hope that you take a look at it, and cheers and happy reading. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Loretta. And up next, oh, make sure I have my list correctly. 1 second. Oh, there we go. Up next, we have Crystal King, and she is the author of forthcoming novel In the Garden of Monsters, as well as The Chef's Secret and Feast of Sorrow, which was longlisted at the Center for Fiction's first novel prize and designated as a Mass Book Awards must-read. A social media and AI professor by trade, her writing is fueled by a love of history and a passion for the food, language, and culture of Italy. Her newest novel, In the Garden of Monsters, is a retelling of the myth of Hades and Persephone, inspired by Salvador Dali's 1948 visit to the Sacro Bosco Manor statue garden. I hope I said that correctly. Welcome, Crystal. We see your screen share, but we can't hear you.
Now can you hear me? Yes, okay.
Perfect.
All right, well, we're gonna share again. I had the wrong microphone on. My apologies, everybody. All right, I'm Crystal King. As you can see, this is my novel, In the Garden of Monsters, which Jennifer Saint called a sinister romance and hypnotic gothic fairy tale, surreal and luscious with a fascinating twist on the story of Hades and Persephone. It sort of defies genre. It's mythological, it's gothic, it's fantasy, it's ghosty. It's not scary though. So, but I really want to tell you about the place where it's set. So, as mentioned, it's a story of a retelling of Hades and Persephone set in a garden of stone monsters. And this place actually exists. It takes place in Bomarzo, Italy, which is an hour north of Rome. And if you look at the cover here, yes, I have a woman, but she's might be heading towards something, not away from something. And this monster on the cover is inspired by this guy. This is the Orco or ogre, and he represents also the mouth of hell. And you can see that his tongue inside is actually a table, and there are many meals that take place inside the mouth of this monster. His friend here is Proteus Glaucus, and he represents the if you want to turn back now, you better do it kind of thing. There are lots of mythological creatures in this garden. There's gods and goddesses, this dragon fending off a lion. There's a picture of me on the bench, that's Persephone's bench, or Proserpina, which is the Italian name, which I use in my novel because it's set in Italy. You can see Cerberus is in the background there, the three-headed dog that guards the gates of hell. And Salvador Dali went there in 1948 because it was such a surreal place. All these surrealist artists started going there. It had been created by a man named Vincino Orsini in the late 1500s, but when he died, it was overgrown for almost 400 years. So when Dali went there, it was just this overgrown, wild place. And he filmed a little movie there that is 3 minutes long. And if you go to YouTube and you just look for Salvador Dali and Monster Park or Monster Garden, you'll find this little movie. And so I thought I had to set this crazy Gothic novel of mine in this town. It's this medieval village with a castle on the hill, the crazy garden in the valley. And then Salvador Dali is such an interesting character. This picture is of him in Venice. He's pouring champagne. This is in 1948. He didn't have the super crazy mustache just yet. He was a very controversial figure. He was somebody that was also a genius, an entertainer, and very charismatic. And I explore this these two sides of him, the good and the bad. This is Gala, his wife, who is also a character in the novel. She was not a nice person, and she's not somebody that history maligned. There's many, many accounts of her hitting people at parties, screaming at people, and just being difficult. But Dali loved her and worshipped the ground that she walked on, and he painted many pictures of her. And later in life, they created a tarot deck, and she is the Empress, and he is the magician. And the tarot does feature a little bit in the book as well. And so if you decide that you're interested in reading in the Garden of Monsters and you want me to come to a book club, virtual, or if you're in the Boston area, I'm happy to come to you. But you'll also get with that a digital cookbook that has over 35 recipes in it that are featured from the book from different eras in Italian history. And they're from food historians, food book bloggers, Boston chefs, and a few from me and my husband. And so it's a love letter to food. And you can also find out more on crystalking.com, or you can follow me on Threads. And thank you so much, Adventures by the Book, for having me.
Thank you so much, Crystal. That cookbook sounds amazing. I might even find a book club to join just to be able to get my hands on that. Up next, we have Christina Lynch. Her picaresque journey includes chapters in Chicago and at Harvard, where she was an editor on the Harvard Lampoon. She was the Milan correspondent for W Magazine and Women's Wear Daily, and disappeared for 4 years in Tuscany. Wow, I wish. Under the pen name Magnus Light, she is the co-author of the New York Times bestsellers City of Dark Magic and City of Lost Dreams. Her newest novel, Pony Confidential, is a mystery told from the point of view of a pony who is trying to reunite with the one little girl he really loved 25 years after he last saw her. As a horse girl myself, I cannot wait to hear more. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you so much, Crystal. By the way, I've got to read your book because I know that place well. It's amazing. So super fun. So I'm Christina Lynch. If you know my previous novels, you're going to be like, wait a second, a pony? I write historical fiction set in Italy. But what I realized was that My other books show off my love of Italy and travel and history, but I also really love animals. I have 2 dogs and 2 horses and a pony, and another pony arriving the week after this one. And so I really felt like it was time to include some animals in my work. A pony, by the way, is not a baby horse, as many people think. It's full grown, but of a breed that has evolved to be small due to scarce resources, like in Wales and Shetland. And they're generally not as sweet as horses and can be quite devious. So it's pretty funny that we give them to children. And they teach kids a lot, mostly about frustration. So at the beginning of the pandemic, my pony and I were spending a lot of time together. And I really wanted to write something from the point of view of a pony that captured the central tragedy of ponies, which is that their kids outgrow them. And that's so sad to me. And it's so different from other pets that we just, we keep them for their whole lives. It's what we do. And for little girls, like there's this bond, right, of power and strength and freedom and love that gets just ripped apart because you get taller, which is a pretty terrifying metaphor for growing up, right? So for both the pony and the child, it's just really wrenching. This is the image that I kept at the top of my screen as I wrote the book. So it's really cute, but that is a lot of personality, right? Like that pony has a list of grievances. So it's a very funny book because having a pony as the narrator of a book is inherently funny, but it's also a really emotional book for me. My own happy childhood ended when I was 8, when my mom died, and that's not the story of this book, but those feelings of a childhood lost are very much present in the story of Penny, who was the one little girl the pony loved, but who disappeared from his life very abruptly 25 years before the present of the novel. What we know, but the pony doesn't initially, is that Penny has been accused of a murder she didn't commit that happened all those years before when she was 12, and she's just been yanked away from her family and thrown in jail at a moment when her daughter, who has mental health issues, needs her the most. So the irony is it's the human who's locked up and the pony who is loose in the world. So the murder mystery gives momentum and suspense to the story of the pony trying to find Penny and clear her name. He doesn't have opposable thumbs, right? Or even the ability that a dog would have to move unobserved in the world. So it was really fun and challenging to have him as the detective of the story. And it led to lots of great comic moments where he has to rely on other animals to help him in his quest. There's sparrows and rats and seagulls and a sarcastic goat. So it's a really big world that he discovers. I hope people read this book with great enjoyment and hopefully laugh out loud. It just got some really nice reviews. But also that it makes them think about the animals in our lives and ask, are we doing the best that we can by them? And the last shot, this is me and my pony Flora, who's a large pony because I'm not a small adult. But she definitely has that pony personality. If you don't have a carrot, she has zero interest in you. And I think this photo captures that bond, that feeling, that little love with of being on top of this big animal. You've got some steering, but you're also not entirely in charge, which is a lot like life itself. So I really hope that you enjoy Pony Confidential.
Thank you very much, Christina. That sounds like a lot of fun, and I definitely need to add it to my TBR. I just want to send a quick reminder to everyone that we do have some book giveaways to give out, but you have to stay until the end. So make sure you do. Our next author is Anissa Miller, and she is a best-selling fiction author who was awarded an Individual Artist Fellowship in Creative Writing from the Ohio Arts Council in 1998. One of her novels, Our Orbit, was a finalist in regional fiction in the Next Generation Indie Book Awards. Her newest novel, I Never Do This, is a compassionate, thoughtful narrative about hard-won self-realizations. Welcome, Anissa.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate that. And I'm trying to set my timer here. So, I am Anissa Miller. I am coming to you from my front porch in Bowling Green, Ohio. Both of my novels are set in Ohio. And it is such a beautiful evening here today. I thought it would be brilliant to sit out here on my porch and speak to you. And I didn't account for the fact that the cicadas are absolutely going insane. I don't know if you can hear that. I hope not. My cat, true to every Zoom, is meowing out the window because how could I not let him out? And motorcycles are going by occasionally. So I'm hoping I didn't really screw this up. I also thought it would be super smart to have my nice big poster here with me, which shows my cover that I'm very proud of. And me, that's what I look like to a professional photographer. But then I realized that you probably can't really see it. So anyway, that was my book cover. I would like to say that I am very proud that I Never Do This was published just a few months ago by Sibylline Press, which brings to readers everywhere the brilliant work of women over 50. And I am so thrilled to be part of Vicki Diarmon and Julia Park Tracy's enterprise with the press. So I Never Do This is a bit of a thriller, and it's also a novel of social issues. Now, it is not an ideological or partisan political novel, if that would even be a novel. It is the story of people who experience the impact of social issues in the struggles of their lives, the lack of understanding within their families, some of the pressures of living in a deeply conservative and religious community, which is southeastern or Appalachian Ohio. I feel like the story of my heroine, Ladine Faye Howell, offers a terrific opportunity for people to discuss issues of reproductive rights, fundamentalism versus modernization, spiritual abuse that we have seen so often resulting from strict religious communities where people can be exploited for their beliefs, gun ownership, and the divide between urban and rural residents that seems to have been growing with greater misunderstandings across our country in recent years. So I think my story can provide an opportunity to consider and discuss some of these burning issues of our time that will only be heating up, and there goes my timer, as the year progresses towards November. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I Never Do This is on sale as an ebook through the month of August. And thank you again for letting me be here with you on my noisy porch.
Thank you so much, Anissa. Your porch looks beautiful from what I can see, and all those noises that you can hear, we couldn't hear. We just heard you loud and clear. Thank you. Up next, we have Simi Monheet. I hope I said that correctly. And she is a graduate of Stanford's novel writing program and has a master's degree in computer science and an undergraduate degree in English. Her work has appeared in jewishfiction.net, The Forward, Moment, Tuaqua, I think. Her Stry, Pacifica Literary Review, and Lily Magazine. Her award-winning debut novel, The Goldie Standard, is an unapologetically Jewish story that delivers a present-day take on a highly creative grandmother trying to find her PhD granddaughter a husband who is a doctor. And welcome, Simi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. And one second here. Okay, thank you so much for having me here. My screen's a little messed up. Anyway, and to all my fellow sibling authors and to everybody else. So Goldie Mandel, who Yossi Klein Halevi called one of the most memorable characters in contemporary Jewish fiction, is a Yiddish-speaking Holocaust survivor stuck in an assisted living facility. She knows that life comes at you every single day. She also knows that she's not going to let a few ups and downs control her. The thing is, Goldie isn't content with controlling only her own destiny. She's trying to control everyone else's as well, which is why she concocts this scheme she's convinced she can mastermind her granddaughter Maxie's love life, and she concocts this scheme where she's going to research doctors on the Facebook. She's going to fake illnesses, and she's going to make Maxie, her beautiful, wonderful, talented, gorgeous, intelligent granddaughter, her medical advocate. And that's how she's going to get her in front of every eligible and acceptable, and for Goldie, that means Jewish, doctor in the New York metropolitan area. But Maxie has her own voice, and as much as she loves and cares for her grandmother, she's inherited her grandmother's strength and determination, along with her romantic heart. So things don't go according to plan. But something very funny happens along the way. Goldie learns and changes and adapts, almost despite herself. So now I'd like to tell you a little bit about how I came to write the Goldie Standard. Like Goldie, most of my parents, most of my friends' parents, and almost all my older relatives were Holocaust survivors. Their children were their universe. So we understood. There was no question that we had to honor their chutzpah, we had to respect their wisdom, we had to preserve their humor, and their humor was absolutely nuts. It was acerbic, but it wasn't bitter. It was tender, but not sentimental, but incredibly funny. So how do I take on that responsibility where I have to honor them? And you write a book. So I wrote the Goldie Standard. Goldie is that Jewish mother. She's a bubby. She's a safta. She's fierce. She's relentless. She's a force of nature. Sadly, her generation is almost gone now. And my hope is that the Goldie Standard is a book that celebrates that legacy that I received. It's a book I hope my daughter reads. She better read it. And I hope that eventually one day, maybe my grandchildren will read it. What else can I tell you about the Goldie Standard? It's not exactly a rom-com. It's not specifically about Jewish identity, intermarriage, aging, family, intergenerational relationships, and generational trauma. But it's about all of those and more. It's about life in all of its facets and complexities. It's about how each generation needs to understand the other, respect where they're coming from and where they're going to. It's about how we carry forward our identities, even if we dare to redefine our place in our current world. For Goldie, it's all about family, survival, and love. I'd love to be invited to your book clubs to talk about Goldie, to talk about what inspires her and what inspires you. I'd love for you to read the Goldie Standard and fall in love with her, warts and all. If you loved Fiddler on the Roof, if you enjoyed The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, if you appreciate Barbra Streisand in just about anything, then I think you could find a place in your heart for Goldie too. I also just have to add that this is a starred Kirkus review and recently won the best women's fiction award in the American Fiction Awards 2024 just last month. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Simi, and congratulations on your award. Sounds like a delightful book. Up next, we have Michelle Moran, who is the internationally best-selling author of 8 historical novels. She's a native of Southern California, and she attended Pomona College, then earned a master's degree from the Claremont Graduate University. Her novels, translated into more than 20 languages, include icons like Nefertiti, the Heretic Queen, Cleopatra's Daughter, Madame Tussaud, the Second Empress, Rebel Queen, and Mata Hari. In her newest novel, Maria, she takes readers back to the New York of the 1950s for the remarkable tale of the woman who inspired The Sound of Music and the man who penned it. The Sound of Music is one of my favorite movies of all time, so I'm very excited to hear more. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you to Adventures by the Book for having me. I am really excited to be here and to share with you Maria's story. As the wonderful introduction said, thank you for the introduction. This is the story of the real Maria von Trapp, the woman who inspired The Sound of Music. For fans of The Sound of Music, I think you will enjoy learning about Maria's real story, her real life. Anyone who has seen the film knows that it's just not possible for anyone to be Julie Andrews as a mother. But who was she? And this was a question that came to me during the pandemic when I was watching the film, not for the first time in my life, but for the first time with my kids. And I was watching Julie Andrews on the screen and wondering what was her actual relationship like with these 7 children. Was it really just a different time? And so things were simpler back then, and maybe it was easier to get along with such a huge group of stepchildren. It turns out afterward, when I decided I want to write a book about Maria and I started the research, I started with Maria's autobiographies, written in the first one in 1949, and her daughter's autobiography, and delving into this research, found that she was, the real Maria von Trapp was a lot more complicated than the woman portrayed on the screen, of course. And so the book begins with the very real problems that Maria had with the script. And she approaches Rodgers and Hammerstein, in particular Oscar Hammerstein, to ask him, please don't go with this script. This is not an accurate reflection of my life. This is not an accurate reflection of so many of the things that happened. And he says to her, basically, I'm so sorry, but the show is moving on. And he palms her off to his assistant, who he tells, oh, just take some notes and make her feel better. And this is the story of her telling, this is Maria's story as it unfolds to this assistant. And I hope that readers will come away with a sense of nostalgia if they enjoyed the movie. For those who've never seen the movie, with a sense of a greater sense of the politics and the time of Austria in World War II. And pre-World War II. This was one of my favorite books to research and write, and I would love to speak with book clubs about it. I am calling in from London, just outside of London, so it can be difficult. Yeah, it's midnight here, but actually 1 a.m. So it's difficult sometimes to figure out a time with book clubs where I can speak. But I am happy if anyone is in the nearby vicinity or has a time that works. Love talking to book clubs about the book. And I hope that readers who end up picking it up enjoy it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for that pitch. And thank you for staying up so late. I did not realize we had somebody from across the pond clubbing in. So I hope you get some rest soon. Up next, we have Jill Paul, who is the best-selling author of 12 historical novels, many of them about real women from the past whom she thinks have been marginalized or misjudged by historians. Her novels have reached the top of the USA Today, Wall Street Journal, and Toronto Globe and Mail charts, and have been translated into 22 languages. Her newest novel, Scandalous Women, which came out this week, is about Jackie Collins and Jacqueline Susan, 2 dynamic, groundbreaking writers renowned for their scandalous and controversial novels. and the young editorial assistant who introduces them. Welcome, Jill.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Yeah, I'm calling in from London as well. So it is very late here. But yeah, I wanted to start by asking whether any of you used to sneak copies of your dad's Jackie Collins novels and look up the naughty bits, because I know I certainly did. And I think she was probably responsible for a whole generation of school kids getting their sex education, which is something she was very, very proud of. So this novel, Scandalous Women, is about her, Jackie Collins, and Jacqueline Suzanne, the author of Valley of the Dolls, at the period in the late 1960s when they published their first novels in the midst of a publishing industry that was still very elitist, a real boys' club, and quite misogynist. And they caused the most incredible scandal. It's hard to imagine today because they were writing about sexually liberated women. As Jackie Collins said, her women always come on top in the boardroom and in the bedroom. And it just, in the 60s, society, and particularly this publishing boys' club, just were not ready for it. They were absolutely lambasted by the literary critics who thought they were destroying the great temple of literature. They were criticized by feminists. They got hate mail from the public. They were even criticized by other authors. So, for example, Barbara Cartland went on a BBC show, The Wogan Show, with Jackie Collins and said to her face, she said, "You're responsible for all the perverts in England." So they're up against this, and they know that they can't rely on the reviews. The reviews were absolutely dire of their books. They had to go out there and meet the readers directly. So Jacqueline Suzanne basically invented the book tour. She went to bookshops coast to coast. She signed copies for readers. She befriended all the booksellers. She used to keep a Rolodex with all their names, wives' names, kids' names, pets' names. So next time she went in, she could go, "Hi, Brad, how's the dog? Had her puppies yet?" She knew everything. She was just a total pro. And Jackie Collins followed in her footsteps too. And it so worked for them because Valley of the Dolls sold 31 million copies, and Jackie Collins sold 150 million copies throughout her slightly longer career. But still, the publishers were really snooty about what they were doing. And I wanted to show this from the other side, from inside a publishing house, my kind of version of Mad Men, but set in the world of publishing rather than advertising. So I invented this character called Nancy, who's actually the most autobiographical character I've ever written, because Nancy comes straight from college. She comes to the big city to start work in a publishing company, which is what I did. She knows nobody. She's got total imposter syndrome. She's just waiting for people to find out that she hasn't got a clue what she's doing. And she puts up with an awful lot of sexism from lecturers, bosses, and authors who think it's part of her job description to sleep with them, which also happened to me, I can testify. So I got to use a lot of my own life experience in Nancy's story, and that was a lot of fun. But I really wanted to write about the two Jackies because I think they're really important to all women novelists working today. They changed the way that we market our books. We reach out directly to readers rather than waiting for the New York Times critic to notice us. They popularized entertaining, fast-paced books that also dealt with serious themes, but they did not have to be. They were for busy people that didn't necessarily want to read the classics full of metaphors and dusty old tomes. They wanted, people to enjoy their stories and to be entertained by them. And they made it cool to read books like theirs as well. They got people reading who hadn't read books before. So I think they did us all a great big service. Anyway, I would love to visit book clubs. I mean, it has to be by Zoom unless you happen to be a book club in London. But I'm always happy. I can stay. I can string a sentence together at this time of night if anybody wants me to come and visit. And I would love to talk to you about Scandalous Women, which came out yesterday. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jill. And again, thank you both, you and Michelle, for staying up this late to come hang out with us. We're so grateful to have you here. Our next author is Anna Quinn, and she is the author of The Night Child, listed as a #1 best real psychological fiction on Goodreads, and Ingram's 2018 Best Book Club book. In her newest novel, Angeline, which is a Forward Review Award winner and was nominated for a Washington State Book Award, she explores the complexities of our past selves and the discovery of our present truth, the enduring imprints left by our losses, forgiveness and acceptance, and why we believe by what we believe. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you. It's really wonderful to be here. I can't wait to read all these books. I'm going to try to read them all. They sound fantastic. So I'm going to talk about Angeline. And this came out in 2023 in hardback, and then in March this year came out in paperback. So Angeline is the story of a young woman who, after surviving a tragedy that killed her family, one that she feels responsible for, joins a cloistered convent in Chicago. And by cloistered, I mean with the exception of chanting and singing, they are silent the rest of the time. When the archdiocese runs out of money to keep the convent open, she's torn from her carefully constructed life and sent unwillingly to a radical convent of feminist nuns on an island in the Pacific Northwest. So here that's when she learns to confront her past, and she navigates a strange healing power that awakens within her, and it's a power that could be her saving grace or her downfall. So that's the surface story, and underneath it's about finding beauty in the broken places, navigating the ghosts of the past, why we believe what we believe, the willingness to let go of what no longer serves us. It's also about friendship and women transcending restrictions and becoming the driving force of their own lives. So I wanted to say a little bit about the genesis of the story. Like the seeds of most of my stories, Angeline originated from a dream and an image of a young woman who began showing up consistently in my dreams a few years ago. In the beginning, she showed up maybe once a week, then it was 2 or 3 times a week, then almost nightly. And each time the image became more vivid. Sometimes she was with a child, a girl in a yellow dress, sometimes lying on a stone floor or sitting across from a sheriff. Once she was standing on a ferry looking a whale in the eye. So one thing I know is that when these images come to the point of insistence, I pay attention and I begin to write them down or sketch them. And I've learned that eventually meaning will come. And it seems the more attention I give the specific images, the more patterns and theme and meanings emerge. So after sketching, I began to ask, what is the story here? And so in my imagination, I ask her questions like, who are you? Why are you here? What do you want? What do you feel? What will happen if you don't get what you want? What do you most want me to know? So the book group conversations around this story have been really wonderful. And we've talked about everything from initial reactions to the story and the feelings it evoked, characters we related to and those we did not, times in our own lives when our lives changed in an instant. And we had to create a new blueprint for living, and really for some people, a new identity. We also had fabulous discussions about the road to feminism and women breaking the rules and following their gut and their instincts and their hearts, and the obvious inequalities that come along with being female and the challenges that come along with breaking the rules. So, and then finally, a theme that's really been terrific to talk about is the longing for belonging and how it can lead us into healthy relationships and unhealthy relationships, and sometimes into even staying when it no longer serves us. I've heard profound stories from readers as they spoke about feeling excluded, how some changed themselves in order to fit in and what that felt like, and how empowering it feels to be included and have a deep sense of connection to community. So I'm just going to end with a little endorsement from Meg Wade Clayton. As you probably know, she wrote The Postmistress of Paris, and she said, through the evocative prose and story that is Anna Quinn's Angeline, we're reminded that grief is complex and dynamic, and that sometimes taking a leap of faith can be the ultimate healing experience. This is the perfect read for anyone who believes in miracles or wants to believe. So I'm going to end with that. And just, I wanted to say, I would love to visit your book group and in our library in person. I love to travel or via Zoom, whatever works for you, and just continue to have some great conversations. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you for going so deep into your process. I thought that was really interesting. Our next author is Julia Park Tracy, who is an award-winning journalist, essayist, and poet. She has written for Huffington Post, Salon, Paste, Scary Mommy, Thrillist, Redbook, Narratively, Oakland Magazine, San Francisco Chronicle, Sunday, Insight, and many other publications in print and online. Her upcoming novel, Silence, is a literary Puritan tale of loss and redemption, based on the author's own ancestor, her seventh great-grandmother. Welcome, Julia.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me? Okay, good. So this is my novel, Silence. This is just an advanced reader copy. It's not going to be published until September 24th. But Silence is the name of this character. My seventh great-grandmother was named Silence Greenleaf. And I was doing some literary research, or I should say, family genealogical research for my previous book. And when we broke through what they call a brick wall, I was able to go back several more generations and found a bunch of my ancestors who basically came off the Mayflower. And the names of these Puritan ancestors were always like right out of the Bible, or they were these names like Mercy and Grace and Ruth and Patience and so on. And this one's name was Silence, and that name just gripped me. So in the back of my mind for many months, couple of years, I had the idea, I gotta write something about this character named Silence. So in the novel of Silence, it takes place over a single year with some flashbacks to the previous year. Silence has lost her mother, her husband, and her brand new baby. She's pregnant, and then her baby. All three of them pass away, and she is so distraught by these terrible things happening that in her Puritan church, she cries out, how could God do this to me? Well, the Puritans do not like that at all. And so she is punished with in several ways, everything from having her hair shorn off to being flogged at in the stocks and being fined money. Her father's fined money for not, keeping her under control, blah, blah, blah. And she's given a year of silence to suit her name. So this book is about the year of silence. So it's about her and it's about being silenced. And the thing about historical fiction, or also, futuristic science fiction, is that you can be writing about things that are happening today, right now, while also talking about things that happened long ago. So the details around this book and this story are the true story of my seventh great-grandmother. But as I was writing this, I was watching this Supreme Court nomination of Justice Kavanaugh and the Christine Blasey Ford testimony, and I was so full of rage about the silencing of women. And I've noticed some of the other authors here talking about their characters who have been silenced, who have not been allowed to have their say. And so this book is essentially it's like a bouillon cube of rage about the women who have been silenced and not allowed to tell their story. And there are several other characters in here who have not been allowed to tell their story. So it's a working through of that. And it's very feminist in the sense of this is how they teach you how to hate women, right? But it is about how does she get through this year? Part of the way she gets through is through colonial crafts. So there's weaving, there's a spinning of yarn, there's beekeeping, there's the making of a garden, and lots of different things like that. So there's lots of women's work and women's crafts. There's also a lot of colonial medicine. So her community, the Puritans, are still using the four bodily humors and the very kind of medieval medicine, whereas this handsome doctor from Harvard comes to visit her. And this is where the love story begins, the meet cute. He comes to see her. They have a lot of visits, and she can't speak, but he brings her, why don't you try this herb called St. John's wort? Why don't you take lots of walks? You should probably drink more fluids, but all told in the language of the colonial times. And he also says,
So sorry, Julia, you're out of time.
I'm
but
at
that
time. I
sounds
couldn't,
amazing.
yeah. So it's coming out in September. You'll see it on any of your local bookstores or Amazon, and I hope you love it, and I'd love to come to your book club.
It sounds absolutely amazing. I think
Thank you so
Bouillon
much.
Cup of Rage is the most intriguing
Bouillon Cube of
way.
Rage.
The most intriguing way I've heard a book described. So I'm sure it's great. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Our next author is Susie Vitello, whose award-winning short fiction and nonfiction has appeared in The Rumpus, Mississippi Review, Plasm, Tarpaulin Sky, the Southampton Review, and various anthologies and other literary journals. She holds an MFA from Antioch, Los Angeles, and has been a prize winner in the Atlantic Monthly Student Fiction Contest and the Frank McCourt Memoir Prize, and has been a recipient of an Oregon Literary Arts Fellowship. Her newest novel, Bitter Root, is about a forensic artist who confronts a crime against her own family, while MAGA politics, racism, and violence rage in a small town in the Bitter Root Mountains of Idaho. Welcome, Susie.
Hey, thank you so much. And greetings to book lovers and authors. And thanks to Sarah and Susan for hooking us up. So many good books I've learned about today. I want to get them all. So today I'm going to talk to you about my novel, Bitter Root. And like Laura's, Simi's, Anissa's, and Julia's books, it's also published by the fabulous Sibylline Press. So reviewers such as Kirkus and Forward have cast it as a page turner. So it might be the perfect thing for those final days, dog days of summer. And in Bitter Root, after college, Hazel Mackenzie returns to Steeplejack, which is a fictional silver mining town in northern Idaho. She comes back to care for her ailing parents, and after they pass away, she rekindles her relationship with her high school boyfriend, Ethan, and they marry. Ethan is kind of a golden boy. He's the son of one of the revered original mining families in the area, and Hazel is kind of the opposite of that. She's half Japanese, and she's kind of from the wrong side of the tracks, but in high school, different people get together, and so they come back to their hometown, they find each other again, they get married. So those details are kind of delivered via backstory later in the novel, but the book opens 3 years after that. And in the first chapter, Ethan is tragically killed in a car accident. So while grieving and trying to put her life back together as a talented forensic artist, that's what she does for a living, Hazel's life plans are interrupted again when her twin brother Kento and his husband Tom, who live in Seattle, pursue parenthood by hiring Kento's high school girlfriend Corinda, who's trying to leave her own troubled marriage. Corinda's motives aren't exactly on the up and up, though. Unable to face the fact that Kento is gay, she indulges in the fantasy that Kento will basically turn straight and somehow realize that she, Corinda, is the love of his life. Things get increasingly complicated when Corinda's pregnancy becomes high risk, and good old Hazel agrees to look after her. You can imagine this doesn't go over well with Corinda's ex, and his story is he heads the local right-wing militia. So the situation culminates in violence, and after which Hazel finds herself at the center of a politically divided town. You can imagine that, I think, from northern Idaho, that something like that could happen. To add to Hazel's plight, amid the turmoil, she discovers some dark secrets about Ethan and his double life, as well as letters written by her Japanese-American great-grandfather during her grandparents' forced internment during World War II, which fills some blanks about her grandparents' stoicism and bitterness. Bitter root has double meanings, experienced by Hazel and Kento when they were kids. No spoilers though, but Bitter Root does end on a hopeful note. And there is a love interest who pops in about halfway through. And from what I told, the novel contains a rather spicy sex scene. So I've been lucky enough to get a few blurbs from some of my favorite authors. Renee Denfeld says Bitterroot is an exceptional novel by a great talent. And Cheryl Strayed chimed in to say that Bitterroot is an absolute page turner, and like everything Susie writes, a deep pleasure to read. And as of yesterday, Bitterroot is available as an audiobook, my very first audiobook, very excited, narrated by the fabulous Cindy Kay, as well as print anywhere you buy books. And this month, like other Sibylline books, it's on sale for the unbelievable price of $1.99 on the Kindle version. So I just visited a book club last week, had a blast, and I love interacting with readers, whether in person or through Zoom. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Susie. Congrats on the audiobook. That's so exciting.
Yeah, she gives a whole different, she's an Asian American narrator, and I was listening to it today and I was just like, I wrote that.
That's amazing.
Such a buzz.
I'm sure it's a whole new experience listening to your book rather than reading it. Thank you. Our next author is Tracy Anderson Wood, who is an international and USA Today bestselling author of 4 books, as well as a published playwright whose family is steeped in military tradition. Tracy has authored magazine columns and has written and directed plays and screenplays. Her newest novel, Catherine the Wright Sister, is an unforgettable novel that shines a spotlight on one of the most important and overlooked women in history and the sacrifices she made so that others might fly. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Adventures by the Book. Thank you, Susan, who I know is flying off to Europe, I believe. Oh no, or Africa. So I just wanted to put in a plug for Adventures by the Book. It is one of my very favorite organizations, and I love it because it helps connect me with readers and book clubs, which is, all right, secret here. That's really why I write books. I love the writing, I love the research, but I really, really love engaging with readers and talking to book clubs. So I want to talk to you today about my upcoming novel. Here's the gorgeous cover, Catherine the Wright Sister. It's an absolutely book of my heart, because what I like to do is to find amazing women in history whose stories need to be told. Stories about women who changed history, but were little known or understood. And as Julia Park Tracy said, or is it Julia Tracy Park, I think, that what happened in the past really is still very relevant for the future. And I think it's really important to know these stories, and that's why it is my absolute honor and joy to bring them to readers. Well, Catherine the Wright Sister is a novel and is based on the hidden story of the woman behind the invention of the airplane. Catherine's hard work and the sacrifices she made changed the history of aviation, and very likely the world. While every school child knows, and I'd like to do a little poll here, who has heard of Orville and Wilbur Wright, right? You just write it in there. Who's heard of it, right? Who's heard of it? I know I've heard of them. Orville and Wilbur Wright, right? Everybody has heard of them. How many of you have heard of Catherine Wright or Catherine Wright Haskell? Right? That's when we usually get crickets, right? Well, her role was absolutely critical to the invention of the airplane and keeping the family together. In fact, she was the backbone of the family. And without her, the invention of the airplane probably would not have happened when it did. And let's look at history a little bit. If the airplane had not happened when it did, if Catherine hadn't gone to Europe and sold the idea of the airplane and actual airplanes to the powers of Europe prior to World War I, if that hadn't happened, and the Germans, who were also desperately trying to invent the airplane, got it first, what would have happened? So these stories are so important, and they're lost to history. And Catherine's story really, really appealed to me, because not only did this family invent something amazing, they were a truly remarkable family, and their love for each other and their dynamism and their quest, even at great risk to their own lives, their support, their own businesses. They did this in spite of everything and risked everything for it. Catherine's role was more about sourcing materials and managing the communications. She helped solve a lot of the perplexing issues they had, and she kept Wilbur and Orville focused on their mutual goal, even when it seemed quite hopeless. But then in 1903, the Wright brothers made the first controlled and sustained flight for humankind. What followed was fame and fortune that the Wrights had never anticipated. And I've read historians say that if the brothers were alive today, they might be considered on the spectrum. They were that reticent to speak in public. They were not marketers. They were not men who could go out and speak in front of a crowd. Wilbur did a few very short speeches. Orville wouldn't speak in public at all. But it was Catherine, who is quite gifted, who had spoke French and was a teacher of Latin. She learned the European languages and went off to Europe and spoke with kings and queens and captains of industry and all the leaders, and basically sold them on the idea of airplane and then on actual airplanes, which were then ordered by the thousands. So this role of hers was not an insignificant role. It was very important. And there's also a little bit of a love story in there too. I can't write a novel without having that part of it in there. And there is a very bittersweet romance, which I think that the readers will enjoy as well. And for the first time, I wrote a story in men's point of view. So that was a lot of fun. I've always written in a female point of view. But I found in my research that was actually Wilbur and Orville and their father's own writings in their letters, in their diaries, going on and on about how important Catherine was, that I learned from their own mouths how important that was. And so I decided I want to tell the story from their point of view as well. So that's what I did, and I hope you enjoyed. I certainly enjoyed doing the different voices. And in the audiobook, we will have different readers for the different characters, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to hear it myself. I'd like to share a few quotes. Am I getting on time?
Yeah, I'm so sorry, Tracy, but
Okay.
you can
Well,
hear all these amazing quotes if you read the book, which you
no,
most
no.
definitely
There's
should.
only a few, but I'm just going to wrap up then. Say my book comes out September 10th, and it is available for pre-order right now. And after any of your favorite booksellers, I am happy to come to book clubs. I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you so much for listening. Happy reading.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I love what you said about your book, and I'm so interested to hear more because we need to know more about the amazing women that we have in history who made a difference. Thank you. And our last author of the day, but most certainly not least, we have Zorro the drummer, who throughout more than 30 years of his career has been consistently voted the #1 R&B drummer and clinician by the premier music industry publications, Modern Drummer, Drum, and Rhythm magazine. Zorro's novel, Maria's Scarf, a memoir of a mother's love, a son's perseverance, and dreaming big, is a beautiful and transformative memoir that tells the story of a family fighting for survival against almost insurmountable odds. Welcome, Zorro.
Can you hear me? Awesome to be with you guys. Well, here's my memoir, if we can get a look at it. It's called Maria's Scarf, and it's a memoir of a mother's love, a son's perseverance, and dreaming big. The first thing you should know is I've spent actually the last 40 years touring around the world with Lenny Kravitz, Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, Bobby Brown, New Edition, Earth, Wind and Fire, lots of different groups. So Maria's Scarf is my story of how I went from the slums to the spotlight as a world-renowned drummer. I grew up in Compton, California, known as the Hood, and I was raised by a single immigrant mother. My mother, Maria, was from Mexico, and she raised 7 children alone. We moved about 30 times by the time I was in the 4th grade, and many times we moved with my red radio flyer wagon from one apartment to the next. Through a twist of fate, we ended up in rural Oregon, where we ended up living in our 1962 Chevy Nova. In junior high school, I took an after-school job as a janitor. One day, the band director caught me playing drums in the band room and enlisted me into all the school bands, and that's how I got discovered as the janitor. A couple of years later, after I graduated, I wound up in Beverly Hills High School, where I pretended to be a new student for an entire year. There, I met some famous kids who changed the trajectory of my life. I wrote Maria's Scarf over a period of about 15 years, and I read about 300 books on the craft of writing memoir to write the book. I wrote it essentially to honor the memory of my single immigrant mother, Maria, who was my hero, and she was the wind beneath my wings. We've all heard that saying, behind every great man is a great woman. And sometimes that woman is the man's mother. In my case, that was the situation. My story is an overcoming story of epic proportions. It deals with fatherlessness, hunger, bullying, racism, abandonment, and abject poverty. But it's also about love, family, and the power of dreams. Think Rudy, Rocky, The Blind Side meets Forrest Gump, but it's a completely original story. In fact, we're working on turning it into a movie and a Netflix series. In 4 words, I would describe the book as heartbreaking, heartwarming, hilarious, and hopeful. If you want to know why I still wear scarves to this day, you'll have to read the book. The book is full of heart. It's for mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, and anyone who loves to be inspired. I'll read you a couple sentences from the end of the prologue. Dreams are important, and I was rescued by mine. This memoir is yet another dream come true, and I've poured my heart and soul into every word. My true life tale is filled with twists and turns, trauma and triumph, love and hate, adventures and misadventures, and great acts of sacrifice. It is a story for both the young and the old, the sinner and the saint, the dreamer and the schemer. I was blessed to live it. I hope it blesses you to read it. It's been endorsed by a number of different people, as wide-ranging as Lenny Kravitz to Homer Hickam, Dave Ramsey, Tosca Lee, Alex Van Halen. It's about 6 pages of different endorsements. This is my greatest accomplishment in my life because it's the thing that I can inspire the most amount of people with. Maria's Scarf would be a great gift for anyone who wants to inspire anyone in your life. It's published by Blackstone Publishing, and I also narrated the audiobook, which took about 2 weeks in the recording studio, where I read 400 pages, just me. It's on Audible, it's on Downpour. I love to speak at book clubs. My website is Zorro with 1 R, ZorroTheDrummer.com. On the website, you could click on memoir and you can watch the book trailer. I've done tons of interviews and press on behalf of the book, but I'm excited to be on the broadcast here with you, representing the male species, being the one and only male I've seen on this entire broadcast. I feel a bit like Charlton Heston in the Omega Man, the last living male. But anyway, it's been great hearing about all of your guys' books. I love Susan. She's booked me on a lot of things, and I love sharing and speaking and sharing my story. There was a lady who was about 60 who read the book, and she said, your book makes me want to dream again, makes me want to go after the unimaginable, the unattainable. So I know that it will touch your heart. Get ready to laugh, get ready to cry, but get ready to get inspired. It's a beautiful story, very heartwarming story.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, Zorro. And thank you to all of our amazing authors who came in and pitched us their book today. Honestly, I know that my TBR will be never ending because every time I do one of these events for my job, I just keep adding more and more things to read. Just before I forget, I want to make sure that I call out our giveaway winners for tonight. So make sure I'm going to go from the list of the people who are here all the way till the end. Thank you so much, everyone who is here. Our first winner is Amy Dufresne. And then we have Brenda Johnson. Also, Barbara Montejo. Then we also have Dawn Christensen. Oh my goodness. Diane Pavisic. How many am I at? 5. Is that 5? Also, Janice Wall. Thank you for being here. Catherine Folk. We also have Lorraine Russo. Rose Crosan, I hope I'm saying that right. Sherry Ferris and Tiffany Earl. Thank you so much, everyone. All the giveaway winners will be reached out to me. I will reach out to all the giveaway winners and let you know how the process will go. You will be receiving all of your books directly from the authors, so make sure you keep an eye on your email for all of that information. And that is all. Thank you so much for a wonderful night. Thank you for being so patient with me. Thank you for everyone who said I was doing a good job. I really appreciate it. And again, finally, thank you again to all of our authors. You guys have a good night.
Bye.
Thank you, Sarah. Good job.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye, everyone.